My name is Martin Madert with the Witness to War Foundation. It's November 3rd, 2019, and we are in Seattle, Washington for the United States Marine Corps Vietnam Tankers Association reunion. So if you wouldn't mind stating your name and spelling it for me.
John Allen Hughes, JOHNALLENHUGHES.
And do you have a nickname?
Huey. Actually, the whole nickname was Baby Huey, put on by our president, Mr. John Ware, which I never really appreciated and still don't.
So what years were you in the Marine Corps, and what year specifically in Vietnam?
I was in the Marine Corps from 1966 to 1970, and I was in Vietnam from October the 6th of 1967 to October the 24th of 1968.
And what unit were you serving with over there?
Charlie Company of the 3rd Tank Battalion, generally the 2nd Platoon, but I did 6 weeks with the 3rd Platoon too.
So tell me about an experience in Vietnam that really stands out in your mind.
I was given a rotation date of October the 26th of 1968. We were set up for the night in a position that we'd been in for probably a month or better. And we would go up there and spend the night, on guard, and then we would back out and go back to our hooch. And that morning, I'm thinking, I got about 13 days left on my tour, but I think I'm going to extend because, going back to the States, that's a, troop and stomp and spit and shine, and who wants to do that? So I jumped down off the tank as the sun's coming up and we're breaking. I start ground guiding the tank out of the position. It goes back about 10, maybe 15 foot and hits a mine. Kaboom! And I'm on my tail. Call you back, Don. And let me call you back. So hits this mine. I'm on my butt. I'm thinking, well, I've been killed now 13 days before my freaking rotation. But no, I ain't dead. I'm just really knocked down. Get up, and there's a hole there that you can, you could park a small car in. And I get up, and I crawl up on the tank, and I get on the radio and call them up there at the company headquarters at the time, with Micey Ty, I think it was. Say, that big boom you just heard, I just found another tank in this stupid perimeter that you guys are supposed to clear. And so that changed my mind. I said, this rotation business, no. Somebody just sent me a message. And so we had to short track it, carry it back to Dong Ha to get it repaired. And they told me, hey, we got an airplane leaving on the 24th, so I feel like I was thrown out of Vietnam for breaking a tank.
Tell me who you were serving with. Who stands out in your mind?
Well, there was Glenn Hollub, who was here, and I couldn't get him to come upstairs. A guy named Steve Murphy, and no, not Glenn Hoopman, that's what I mean. And Jan Hollub was with us. I don't know if he was there that day. Well, he was there that day, but I don't remember if he was on the tank or not. He was a truck driver. And then there was, who else was there? A whole passel of people show up. They always do. And, wow, look at that hole. Too bad for you. But that's my John Rodriguez had already rotated. So Murphy, there'd been 4 of us, so that was the crew. And
any funny stories amongst you guys?
There's always funny stories amongst us. But
what's one that still gives you a good chuckle?
Well, when we abandoned Micey Tai, when we just rode off, one of the guys looks back, and somebody had built a really magnificent, pardon my French, a shitter, a big wooden and screened in thing, that. And as we're leaving, we hadn't gone 5 miles, hadn't gone 2 miles up the river. You could still see the camp back there. Somebody looks back there, and there is a whole bunch of little Orientals fellows. I guess they were locals. I hope they were locals. They weren't dressed in uniform or nothing. They have got this thing up on got poles underneath it, and they're hauling it off. They carried it back to their ville. So that's another story.
Did you have a lot of encounters with wildlife up there?
Let's see. Did I ever see any wild? Yes, snakes was the big ones I remember. I killed one there up north of Quaviette that I was holding by his tail and his head was on the ground. And then when I was going on R&R, I was up at Quezon in those days with the 3rd Platoon. And we're going on R&R, and I'm riding with this truck driver and this other guy that's going with me on R&R. And I'd say Route 9 is probably, at that time, about 3/4 the length of this table wide. And there is a cobra laying across the whole thing with his head up, doing that cobra thing, you know. I jump out with a .45 pistol. The truck driver jumps out with his rifle. We walk about 20 steps up there, and suddenly it hits us both at the same time. We're going on R&R. We're going out here jump around in the friggin' Indian country with a friggin' snake. Get back in the truck. We're gone. Who's going to shoot the snake, I guess? God knows.
Do you have any leaders that made a big impact on you?
Oh, let's see. Well, I've already told this story. We had a lieutenant named Paul Markham. He got killed over there. But me and Hancock and Don McMillan talked about him last time I did an interview. So it's been recorded.
What was it about Paul that was so...
What really got me, well, he was older than us, of course, by about 3 or 4 years. He had a wife and a kid. And I always thought he was lonely because he was just 2 tanks, 2 tank crews. And he had been sent up there, I don't know, to provide some legitimacy to us, I don't know. Or maybe, keep the infantry from misusing us. But as an officer, he couldn't really, associate with us much. And I was always, what a poor lonely bastard. But I come to find out later, I went to the Marine barracks at Key West. And there was a guy who had been at that same Charlie 4 location that I had been at, was a mortarman. And he said, well, his mortar lieutenant and Paul were good buddies. And I said, well, good, he had a friend there. At least he died with a friend. So.
I know you said it's already been recorded, but I'm interested in what happened to Paul.
We were called out early one morning on January the 19th. It was 19 days past my birthday, as a matter of fact. And he took over the commander's position and bumped Sergeant Hancock, who was the usual tag. I was the driver. And there was a guy named Dusty Rhodes. Every Rhodes guy is always called Dusty. And so Hancock became the loader. Dusty was the gunner. I was driving. There's a platoon of infantry from Charlie 1-3 has got themselves ambushed bad up there. So we go tearing up there and driving along, heading towards where they're at. We're on line now, expecting to make contact. I've seen a few rounds fly in, but this is the first time I've been in an honest-to-God battle. And all of a sudden, this little goop jumps up out of the bushes. He ain't not from here to that door, I bet you. Actually, he comes out of a fighting hole and starts shooting, but he doesn't shoot at me, which I to this day, I cannot understand why he did not shoot at me. He starts shooting at the infantry that's on line with us. And I fired my pistol, Rhodes fired the .30, every other rifleman out there, he just disappeared to my sight, And so they said, keep moving, so I ran him over. If he was alive, he wasn't after I run him over. And then evidently he had a friend up there a little further back, and all of a sudden he just cut loose with that AK, and I learned later this was part of their technique. Just fire the whole thing and it would ride up naturally. 3 rounds right by my head, and it rode right on up and right through Lieutenant Markin's head. Killed him dead. So, you know, inch or two to the left there would have been me. So and he gone home to his wife and kid and told war stories about that silly ass Hughes didn't have sense enough to get the hell down when the bullets was flying.
Well, thank you for sharing that story.
Sure.
Did you ever get in touch with his family?
You know, I know where he's buried at in San Diego at that big national cemetery. And I've looked at stuff online. His father lived till he was 102 years old. But I never thought about, that was before I even got in with this organization, and I didn't have no idea how you, I know he had a daughter, but you know, she was probably raised up by some other fellow or something. And I figure if they want to talk to me, they'll find me if they want.
So, lastly, what do you want people to remember about Vietnam based on your experiences there?
We did our very best, but we had already been handed a pile of crap and told to make a popsicle out of it. And I personally, I've always thought that Lyndon Baines Johnson and what's his name, the guy that was the Secretary of Defense.
Westmoreland?
No, well, Westmoreland, he was a dip, but who was he? The one that went to come from General Motors. McNamara, yeah. McNamara and Clark Clifford. Every damn one of them should have been shot at dawn, as far as I'm concerned.
Lastly, any words of advice, final thoughts for anybody watching this in the future?
Well, just do your best. That's all you can do. You're gonna run into crap out there that there ain't no help for, and just do the best you can.
Truly not. Well, Huey, thank you so much for taking the time today. It's an honor and a pleasure to interview you. But
Yes,
more
sir.
importantly, thank you so much for your service.
You're quite welcome.